Hey guys, Triple B here. Today we're going to be covering the new set Pokemon 151, which is a trip down memory lane if you've been with the franchise since the start, since it's actually a complete set of the Kanto Pokemon, and they even have their Pokedex numbers as the set list numbers, as a fun little nod to the games. This isn't just a nostalgic treat or a collector set though. Thanks to some interesting new mechanics, Pokemon 151 has competitive potential for players too. But before we dive into the buy list recommendation, there's something important to note. Pokemon 151 is a promotional set. Unlike the quarterly sets, which we get, well, every 3 months, you do have to buy special promotional product to get these cards. So you won't be able to find booster boxes on store shelves. You'll be finding like an ETB, so an Elite Trainer box, which is going to have 10 packs, promo cards, some dice, or you're going to find like an Alakazam box or a Zapdos box. They've even got these little boxes that kind of look like build and battle kits from pre-releases, but it's just going to have 6 booster packs in it. So keep that in mind. If you're trying to find Pokemon 151 to open an entire box, you're not going to be able to do that. You do have to find the promotional products. It does mean that card prices might be a little bit higher, as well as code prices might be a little bit higher, at least in the initial release, since stores aren't going to be getting cases of it. They're going to get limited runs of these products. So keep that in mind. Don't stress right when the set comes out. You don't need to get these cards right away. They're going to be drip feeding more promotional products, I think every month, like September 22nd, we get the first batch. October, we're going to get some more stuff, and I think in November we get some more. So you'll see product coming out. Don't stress about buying singles immediately, but just something to keep in mind. Today, though, I'm going to guide you through the essential cards I think that everybody should consider having in their collection. There's going to be staples that, well, everyone should pick up. There's some cards that do have potential given the right circumstances, as well as some that could be good techs to have. Also going to cover cards that are going to be deck specific. So if you know, hey, you like running Charizard EX, there's some cards in the set you're going to want to pick up. If you know that, like, no, I hate that card, well, then you don't need those cards, so don't worry, I'll break that down for you. Also, as always, we're going to discuss the cards that I think have potential to make an impact on the Gym Leader Challenge format. So if you're a fan of that format, hang around to the end because we will be going over that. And at the end, there'll also just be a full breakdown of all the cards that I think you should pick. So if you just want to skip to the end and just see a list, you're welcome to do that as well. But whether you're opening packs, buying singles, or just curious about what this set has to offer, you're definitely in the right place. Now let's kick things off with our first category, the staple cards. So the staples for this set, there's actually only 4 that I'm going to think everybody should pick up. There's a new Pidgey that has the Call for Family attack. It's going to let you search your deck for 2 basic Pokemon and put them onto your bench, then you shuffle your deck. Pidgey being able to evolve up into Pidgeot EX, which is a solid card that can just let you get any card from your deck. It's seeing a lot of play in a lot of decks, so having a version of it that you can just have it in the active, help set up your bench, definitely one worth picking up. I'd say get 2, ideally get 4. It's probably not going to be a very expensive card. It is going to be a common, so probably be costing like 10 cents. It's not going to break the bank, and definitely one to add to your collection. There's also a new Ditto card that has a very interesting ability. When it's in the active spot, only on your first turn, you can search your deck for a different basic Pokemon and switch it out with Ditto. So in decks where you're wanting to start a specific thing in the active, like Lost Box, you want to make sure you're starting the game with Comfy. RCSV star decks, you want to make sure you're starting the game with RCSV. Ditto is a great way to just kind of pad up the numbers of your basics. You can only have 4 copies of a card, so instead of having 4 copies of Comfy or 4 copies of Arceus in your deck, you could potentially have up to 8 if you wanted to run 4 Dittos. I think 2 is kind of the sweet spot, just to kind of pad the numbers in your favor a little bit, but if you want to pick up 4 copies of this, you're welcome to do that. I'm only recommending 2. It's probably not going to break the bank though. Might be a holo rare, so it could be up to like $4 or $5. Realistically, though, I think it'll probably be around the $1 to $2 range and shouldn't be breaking the bank too much. This next one, though, everyone's going to be wanting to get copies of it, and it's likely going to be a little bit pricey. Luckily, you can get a promotional version of it with one of the pricier promo products, and it's Mew EX. So Mew has a very, very solid ability in Restart. Once during your turn, you can just draw until you have 3 cards in your hand, which is amazing. So it's like a budget Bibarel. It's a basic Pokemon, so you can get it going very quickly, and then the attack it has, Genome Hacking. It's going to cost 3 colorless energy, but you get to choose one of your opponent's active Pokemon's attacks and use it as this attack. So colorless energy means you can just be splashing this into any deck. For example, Miraidons that are running Flaffy, you can use Flaffy, get lightning energy onto Mew, attach for turn, use another Flaffy, I guess, because, well, it's 3, and then it's ready to go. It also has free retreat, so it's a great pivoting option. Baxcalibur deck, so you can accelerate water energy out to Mew, use it. You could be attaching a just basic energy of some sort and a double turbo energy in Arceus V-Star decks. It's going to be able to attack in a lot of decks, and even just for the ability, it's a solid card, and the free retreat option is also amazing. The other stable card I'm going to recommend is Giovanni's Charisma. It lets you remove a energy card from your opponent's active Pokemon and make them put it into their hand, and you get to put an energy onto your active Pokemon. So you're kind of messing with your opponent while getting some energy acceleration for yourself. Not all types have energy acceleration currently, so just being able to give some more consistency to decks that are really suffering. So like Steel type doesn't really have a great energy acceleration. Grass doesn't. Fighting doesn't. It's just a way for those to kind of compete, as well as disrupting your opponent. It can also go into just any deck as just a 1 or 2 of. Be really helpful. If you know that you're going to be two-shotting into your opponent's Pokemon, making sure that it's like, hey, I'm two-shotting you, but now you don't have the energy to attack. It's definitely a solid inclusion for a lot of decks, and I'm very interested to see where decks will go with this card. And next, we're going to be covering the cards that I think are just going to be new decks in and of themselves. So we're getting a new Blastoise line. So Squirtle, Wartortle, and Blastoise EX. The Squirtle, you could be running the one from Pokemon Go. You could be running this Squirtle. With the Blastoise, though, it's going to be in rotation longer than the one from Pokemon Go is. So eventually you would need to switch over to this Squirtle. So I would recommend picking up 4 copies of the Squirtle just to be safe. It has the attack withdraw that you get to flip a coin, and if it's heads during your opponent's next turn, they just can't damage it. So starting that, even if you're going second, using that attack to potentially be invincible, it's a great way to buy some time. The Wartortle, it's mostly in here just if you're a little bit slow to start up. Ideally, you're just going to rare candy over it, especially since it's a water type Pokemon. You can be using Arita, get Blastoise, get rare candy, immediately go up. So the Wartortle is likely not going to be included in decks, but it's good to have it just in case you need it. And then the Blastoise is a very solid Pokemon. It's got 330 HP. It's got an ability that makes it take 30 less damage from attack, so effectively 360 HP. And then its attack does a multiplier of 140 up to 280. So it is capped, but 280, you're knocking out V-Star Pokemon, so it's pretty solid. To get up to that damage though, you're going to discard up to 2 water energy cards from your hand, and for each one that you do 140 damage. So there's going to be situations where you only need to get rid of 1 water energy. So into things like Lost Box, you need to kill a Cramorant. There's no point doing 280, just get rid of 1 water energy and knock it out. To charge it up, you can be using Baxcalibur, you could be using Palkia V-Star. The Baxcalibur means that you can make a very effective water box deck, and kind of seems like it'll just be included into, Baxcalibur decks, like sneak it in as a 2-2 line. Is it going to see play? Potentially. Like, the fact that it's very tanky, I think that this could see play over Chin-Pao, since Chin-Pao to knock it out is going to have to get 6 energy onto it to knock it, and you'd be running Chin-Pao in that deck as well. So just into the mirror match, you could be buying yourself some time and just have a beefy attacker, and into other decks like Giratina V-Stars and stuff, instead of having a small health like Palkia V-Star or Chin-Pao. I know I said small health for Palkia V-Star, 280. It's not small, but Giratina can one-shot it. Giratina can't one-shot the Blastoise, so it'll be interesting to see where the meta goes with this. Also getting another interesting stage to attacker, and it's one we haven't seen for quite a while, actually. So we're getting to see Alakazam EX. And the reason we haven't seen an evolving Alakazam for a while is because there was, some drama with a magician, Uri Geller, and he thought Kadabra was essentially a copy of him, so they weren't legally allowed to print cards of Kadabra, but he's since eased up a little bit. So we've gotten the first Kadabra card, and I think it was about 15 years. Even if you're not going to run Alakazam EX, probably pick up the Kadabra just as a nice little thing to add to your collection. Interesting card, though. It doesn't have an attack that, for 2 psychic energy, you can do 120 damage, and you can use the attack from your bench. People are considering running it with things like Klefki, as well as Snorlax, just to kind of limit what your opponent can do. You could also have a Mimikyu sitting in the active. So they're trying to deal with some barricade that you've put in the active, and you're just sniping things using Alakazam. It's interesting. Definitely a cool card. Is it going to be super meta? I'm not too sure, but it'll be a fun one to play around with. It's one that I'll personally pick up just because I like Alakazam as a Pokemon, but yeah, in the meta, I'm not too sure how much of an impact it's going to have. It'll just be a wait and see kind of thing. The next new deck that we've got coming out is going to be Arbok EX. So Arbok has 2 attacks, one for 2 dark energy, 70 damage, and your opponent can't retreat during their next turn, so you can kind of just lock something in the active. Its second attack, though, is what really makes it shine. For 3 dark energy, you do 150 damage and discard 2 cards from your opponent's hand. So you can be using disruptive cards like Judge to put them down to a 4-card hand, or Iono later in the game to put them down to early in the game, 6 cards, later in the game, potentially, 2 cards, and then use this attack. All of a sudden they have 0 cards. It's interesting. Definitely an interesting concept to play around with, and it's nice that control cards are seeing a bit of a comeback at the moment. It's not something that's seen a lot of support recently, and I know there's a lot of players that enjoy playing the game that way, so I'm sure Arbok will see some play and likely see some success, but only time will tell. Next up, we've got a new Jigglypuff and Wigglytuff. So Wigglytuff EX has 250 HP, But its ability, Expanded Body, if you've got a special energy on it, it has another 100 HP, so effectively 350. We've got another Wigglytuff that came out, and I believe it was Paleo Evolved, that once per turn you can accelerate a therapeutic energy from your hand to one of your Pokemon. So that gets your special energy onto the Wigglytuff, and then you can just attach a double turbo energy to be paying the 3 energy attack cost. It does 90 damage, and if you used a supporter card during this turn, it does another 90 damage, 180, has a DT on it, so it does bump it down to 160, which it's not great, but you're half hitting into things. You're 350 HP. Things aren't really going to be one-shotting you unless they're a fighting type, but you can be playing Dunsparce and remove your weakness, and then things aren't going to be one-hitting you. It's a normal Pokemon as well, so you can be using Charon's Care and just scoop it up after something's hit you a few times, and just make them have to keep repeating it, because you'll just scoop everything up. You have the therapeutic energy, you use your other Wigglytuff, you attach it to a new Wigglytuff EX, you attach the DTE you just picked up, and you've got another big 350 pink fluff ball in the active they have to deal with. So, interesting card, and actually seems like it may have some meta potential, since it's just going to be a big tanky thing. Next, we're going to be covering Onix, which definitely has some rogue deck potential. It's got an attack for 2 colorless energy, so it can be played with a double turbo energy. You're going to discard the top 5 cards from your deck, and for each Pokemon with exactly 4 retreat cost, you're going to do 80 damage. So if you hit 5 things, you're doing 400, which sounds a little ridiculous. Like, how are you going to be pulling that off? Well, we've got some cards to kind of manipulate our deck, right? So we've got Caitlyn, which lets you choose as many cards from your hand, put them on the bottom of your deck, and then draw cards for each one that you did. We've also got Expedition Kit, which lets you look at the bottom 3 cards of your deck and put them on top of your deck in any order. So you can be guaranteeing yourself 240 damage that way, which is pretty solid. And then you just have to happen to hit another thing that has 4 retreat cost off the other 2 cards that you haven't manipulated, and all of a sudden you're getting up to 320 damage, which is knocking out pretty much everything. You're going to be 10 damage shy of EX Pokemon. So do need to find a way to manipulate some damage counters in that way, but I'm sure we can come up with something, and definitely keen for some deck building with that card. And the final card that I think has potential to be a new deck is Golem EX. So it's got 330 HP, pretty beefy guy, and the nice thing about it, it's got an attack for just 1 energy. It does 50 damage, which doesn't sound like a lot, but on your next turn, the attacks of this Pokemon do 120 more damage. So you could just be using that 1 energy attack for 170 damage the following turn. It means you could also be using cards like Cheryl and fully healing this after you've tanked a hit, and then just attach 1 energy and follow up for 170 damage. Or you can go for the second attack, Rock Blaster, that does a base of 180 damage, but if we've used the attack Dynamic Roll the previous turn, now you're doing 300 damage, so the 2 of those combined, 350. It's not bad. You're taking out other EX Pokemon, and getting up to that damage isn't too hard either, since you could just be using 1 fighting energy and a double turbo energy to get to some pretty ridiculous numbers. It does obviously reduce the damage output down by 20, but you're doing 50 and then 300. But now you're just doing 50 and then 280. It's still getting you to exactly 330. You're still one-shotting other Pokemon EX. You're in a pretty good way. So Golem definitely seems like it has some potential, and another one that I'm very excited to do some deck building with. That's it for the cards that I think could be new decks coming out of the set, though, and the next ones we're going to cover are decks that could be updated. Quite a few ones that are going to be coming out for Zorobox in this set. Some that they're answering questions that already have answers, so they may not see play, but definitely interesting ones to be able to experiment with. The first is going to be Clefable. So it's got an attack for 3 psychic energy, does 50 damage, and if it knocks something out, you're going to be taking an extra prize card. In Zorobox, you're going to be running Reversal Energy, which easily pays that attack cost. So if you're spreading around damage earlier with Electivire or Hisuian Braviary, you can be taking some knockouts later with Clefable, taking extra prizes, and then to end the game, use like Slowbro or the Clefable and take extra prizes and just kind of fix up single prize matchups in your favor. Just definitely a very interesting concept to play around with. And the other nice thing about this Clefable is I recently did a video on a Clefairy deck, and one of its worst matchups is Lost Box. So having this Clefable to help out into that matchup, and well, instead of it being a single prize into a single prize match where they can use Sableye and make it a single prize into a single prize that can take 2 prizes in a turn, not great for us, but having Clefable to make it, hey, we can also take 2 prizes in 1 turn, it's definitely an interesting concept to experiment in that list. You can be using things like Cleansing Gloves to make sure that you're able to one-shot into their Sableyes or their Comfeys. You could also try out Radiant Alakazam, so if you hit like a Giratina V-Star earlier and didn't one-shot it, use Radiant Alakazam, move 20 damage off of it onto a Comfey, boss up the Comfey, knock it out with his Clefable. There's some interesting damage manipulation you can do to put that a little bit more in your favor. There's also an interesting Aerodactyl that could see play in Zorobox or just be a deck in and of itself. For 2 colorless energy, it does 100 damage, but it's going to remove the highest evolution Pokemon from the thing that it hit and just effectively devolve it. So you could hit a Charizard EX that normally has 330 HP, but it devolves it to a Charmander that has like 70 HP. Even with a double turbo energy, you're doing 80, but it's knocking it out and you're dealing with that beefy Pokemon by doing a little bit of damage instead. We're also getting some very interesting type coverage in the new evolutions. So Vaporeon, Jolteon, and Flareon all effectively have the same attack. It's going to do 90 damage, and if it's hitting a Pokemon V or EX, another 90 damage, bringing it up to 180. So if you're hitting it for weakness, doubles it to 360. All of them just needing their type and then 2 colorless energy to pay for the attack cost. So a reversal energy easily pays the attack cost of all 3 of them and makes some interesting inclusions to have. We do already have a water attacker in Zorobox and Titan, as well as Raichu, which is covering lightning types. If you're a fan of the evolutions and just want to have these in there instead, well, you can do that now. We're also getting a Cedar that has an interesting attack and could see play in like water control decks or in Zorobox to buy yourself a bit of time. Binding Ink is going to do 50 damage, and during your opponent's next turn, if the defending Pokemon tries to attack, they have to flip 2 coins. Either of them is tails, the attack doesn't happen. The fact that they can just switch around or evolve through that to remove that effect, though, does make this not that great, but it's something that's definitely worth considering, and having 1 copy in your collection isn't going to break the bank. We're also getting a Psychic type attacker in Slowbro, which has Leisurely Tackle. It does 160 damage. If this Pokemon evolved during this turn, this attack does nothing, but if you're using Zoroark to switch into it, it hasn't evolved, it's just come into play. So do 160 damage, hitting for weakness, doubles to 320. You're 10 damage off knocking out like a Urshifu VMAX though, so I still think you probably just stick with the Gallade in that deck. Like you're using Curly as a draw engine, you have Gallade. Gallade's attack cost is already just Psychic double colorless and paid by reversal energy, so it seems like a better alternative. It's something to experiment with though, and again, just having 1 copy in your collection isn't really going to hurt. If you're opening packs, maybe keep 1, don't throw it into the bulk, but if you're looking to buy singles, realistically, you can probably skip this one. We're also getting some new attackers for Swim Freely decks, which is something I didn't think we'd be getting. So we get Goldeen, which is basically in here just to evolve up into Seaking. Seaking has the Swim Freely attack, which it's the same it's always been, does 10 damage, you flip a coin, and if it's heads, you prevent all damage and effects done to this Pokemon on your opponent's turn. The attack that it has though, that we're going to be charging up because it has Swim Freely, so Swim Freely, if you're not familiar with it, there is a Finian that just lets you accelerate as many water energy cards from your hand to your Pokemon that have the Swim Freely attack, so we can charge up the attack Aquahorn very quickly with it. It's from a basic Pokemon instead of having to use Excalibur, which is really nice. Aquahorn's going to do a base of 60 damage and then 30 more damage for each water energy attached to this Pokemon. So to get up to some pretty good numbers, you're likely going to have to attach like 8 or 9 energy to it, right? So 9 energy, that's an extra 270. Add it to that 60, you're doing 330. You can be one-shotting Pokemon EX. It's not bad. You don't have to shuffle that energy back into your deck or discard it. So if you're able to take a knockout and then not be returned knocked out, you're in a good position. You can also be using Arita to get item cards and water Pokemon from your deck. So get an item like Superior Energy Retrieval. If a Seaking is knocked out, you're just grabbing another Seaking and that Energy Retrieval, charging up another one. Definitely an interesting deck concept to play around with, and we may be revisiting Swim Freely when this set comes out. We've also got a new Magikarp from this set, so if you're a believer in Gyarados EX or just really hoping that we get a playable Gyarados in the future, I think this is going to be the Magikarp that would see play in those decks. Splashy Splash. This is translations from Justin Basil's site, so the name may change, but you're going to flip a coin until you get tails, and for each heads, you draw a card. If you're going second, that's pretty solid. It's a great way to set up your hand. Yeah, it's a bit of a Hail Mary thing, but if you have to have a Magikarp in your deck, why not have one that could be getting you cards? And if you're a fan of Miraidon decks or just Lightning Box decks in general, we're getting the new Zapdos EX, which will definitely find a home in those. It's got an ability that if it has any lightning energy attached to it, it doesn't have a retreat cost. So it's a great pivot Pokemon to have. If you're running like a Flaffy engine, just have 1 energy on Zapdos, pop it in the active after something gets knocked out, use Flaffy to charge up an attacker that you specifically want, then retreat back with Zapdos. pretty good. And the attack is also going to cost 3 lightning energy, so having those Flappy to charge this up to be able to attack is very helpful. It does 120 damage to the active, and then also does 90 damage to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon that already has any damage counters on it. So if something is running away, like if you're half heading into something and then they're trying to retreat, and then it's just like, well, go into Zapdos, finish it off, it's definitely a great addition to have for those lists. And finally, for the last deck upgrade, we are seeing a new Charmander that has 70 HP. Also has an attack for 1 fire energy, discard a stadium in play, so it's a great way to counter Path to the Peak, which is really helpful because that shuts down Charizard EX and Pidgeot EX, which is pretty painful. 70 HP means that your opponent's running Lost Box can't go Sableye, 60 on a Charmander, 60 on another Charmander, and shut you down. They can only take out 1 Charmander. If you are going to be running the new Pidgey that has 50 HP though, they could be taking out a Charmander and a Pidgey, or a Pidgey and a Manaphy, so keep that in mind. This Charmander though definitely seems like the one to run. The Pidgey, the 50 HP may be a limitation. If you see a lot of Lost Box at your local meta, maybe stick with the 60 HP one instead. New Charmeleon card, which it's basically just, hey, you need a Charmeleon to evolve into. This one's pretty good, can hit up to 90 damage for 3 fire energy instead of the other one that did 70. So it could be a worthwhile inclusion. And a new Charizard EX. So having a split evolution line, it's a fire type instead of a dark. So if you're seeing a lot of grass counters at your league, might be one worth including. And its second attack does 330 damage. So the other Charizard EX early game is a little bit limited. It's not going to be doing massive damage output. This one though, you could be charging up with the other Charizard EX. So accelerate 3 fire energy to it, attach for turn, do 330. You can knock out their Charizard EX in the mirror match. It's pretty solid. Could also just be a deck in and of itself though. If you're running the Pokemon Go Charizard, doubles the fire energy attached. So attach for turn, Magma Base into this, 330. You do have to discard the energy that's attached to the Charizard, but then you just go attach for turn, Magma Base in again, and just keep swinging for 330. And I think that's probably the way this one's going to see play, but it could be an inclusion in the already established Charizard EX decks. So picking up 1 copy wouldn't be a bad call. The next cards we're going to cover are ones that I think are worth having. You might not need to go out of your way to pick these up. If you're opening packs, definitely hang on to them. And if you're someone that likes to just have as many cards that could see play in the future in your collection and don't mind spending a little bit of money, these are ones that you'll probably want to add. Gonna recommend the new Stadium card. So Cycling Path, you discard an energy card from your hand and draw 1 card. It's effectively just a budget Radiant Greninja. Does see play for you and your opponent, so you could be helping them out. In decks though, where you can be affording to do it, so like Gardevoir, you want energy in the discard, you want to be drawing cards, and you want to counter Stadium, it's going to see play in that for sure. We've also got some interesting supporter cards coming in the set. One being Daisy's Help, lets you draw 2 cards and then look at your face down prize cards. So if you're just curious as to what your prize cards are, having this as a one-off index could be helpful. It doesn't say anything about shuffling the prize cards. When we get the official translations for this card, maybe it's not as good as I think it is. The way I'm reading it is you just get to look at your face down prize cards. So you know what prizes are where. And as you're taking knockouts in a game, it can be pretty powerful to just go, hey, I need these 2 cards. I knocked out a V-Star. I get to take 2 prizes. Cool, I'm going to take those because I want them next turn. If that's how Daisy's Help works, it's definitely a great one-off to have in decks. We're also getting Bill's Transfer. Bill cards always seem to just kind of, look into stuff. We had Bill's Analysis that let you look at the top 7 cards and grab trainers, and now we're getting Bill's Transfer that lets you look at the top 8 cards of your deck, reveal any number of Pokemon you find there, and put them into your hand. With the amount of Pokemon draw power that we have, so we've got Bibarel that lets you draw cards, Revroom that lets you draw cards, Kirlia Engine that lets you draw cards, you're not always needing to specifically draw to get your hand size established. A lot of the times it's just needing to dig that little bit further, and having straight draw cards is always powerful. So having a straight draw card that lets you look at 8 cards, it's pretty big. It does only let you get Pokemon cards, but hey, if it's like, have my Kirlias, I just need to get into a Gardevoir EX, but I don't want to have to research my hand away and thin my deck even further, Bill's Transfer, being able to dig, it's pretty good and could definitely be a great 1 or 2 of in some specific decks. Another great potential tech card is Erica's Invitation. So you're going to get to look at your opponent's hand, grab a basic Pokemon that you find there, and pop it onto their bench. And then you're going to switch it into the active spot. So it's effectively boss's orders, but yeah, you're messing with your opponent's hand. So if they're trying to hold on to a Luminion V, or maybe they have a Squawkabilly in their hand, they didn't have first turn, but now they're just sitting on it like, oh, I'm just going to use it as Ultra Ball fodder. Well, you're going to bring it to the active and take an easy 2 prize knockout instead. So that's pretty powerful. or in control decks where you just want to force them to have something in the active they didn't even want to play that game, it's definitely a great card for that and a good one to have in your collection. Energy Sticker is another card which has some great potential. It is a coin flip thing though, so it's a bit of a Hail Mary. In decks though, where you're kind of just wanting to burn through your hand size and getting some energy acceleration, it's definitely a great addition. You flip a coin, and if it's heads, attach a basic energy card from your discard pile to one of your benched Pokemon. We did previously have Turbo Patch, which was effectively the same as this, but I think the difference is this is only to your bench, whereas that was to any of your Pokemon, so they have kind of limited it. It's an item card, so you can play as many as you want in your turn, so if you just really want to get an attack off first turn, but it costs 2 energy and you don't have another way to accelerate that energy, just run 4 copies of this. You can be running Pokestop to get energy cards into the discard pile to be able to use this and find it being an item card that you get off Pokestop. It's definitely an interesting card to play around with. This set also has a lot of interesting tool cards. The first one I'm going to cover is Rigid Band. So you can attach it to a stage 1 Pokemon and they're going to take 30 less damage from your opponent's attacks, which is great because we're seeing a lot of EX Pokemon that are stage 1s. We've got Reverum, that's a great stage 1 Pokemon that can have up to 4 tool cards attached to it. Just slap 4 of these on there. It takes 120 less damage from attacks. It's a little bit crazy. Obviously, your opponent could counter it with Path to the Peak. You have to discard them all. Just run it with like Lunatone and Solrock so that they don't do that, and you're in a great way. The other tool card that seems pretty interesting is Leftovers. So at the end of your turn, if the Pokemon this is attached to is in the active spot, you get to heal 20 damage from it. It's a great way to help fix up numbers. So it seems like there's a lot of things that are going for 2 shots in this format. 20 damage could be that breakpoint that you need to just make sure that your opponent's not 2-shotting you. You're forcing them to 3-shot you. Or like Lost Box, when they're trying to just do chip damage, you're just removing some of that. Definitely seems like an interesting card to have. And we even have a new Snorlax card that lets you get this card from your discard and put it back into your hand. Well, actually, it lets you get 2 copies. So if you're running high counts of this, to have that extra little bit of healing, they end up knocking it out, or maybe they remove the tool in some way. Just use Snorlax, get them back from your discard. Tool recovery isn't something we see a lot of, so being able to get this one specifically with Snorlax is pretty interesting. Some other interesting colorless Pokemon we're seeing is one being Lickitung. Has an attack that does 70 damage for 3 colorless energy, so you can be sneaking it into decks like Baxcalibur or Flaffy Engines, paying that attack cost, and then on your opponent's next turn, the defending Pokemon can't actually attack. So if they don't have switch outs, you're just sitting there hitting them with Lickitung. You're not doing massive damage, but you're effectively just saying, if you want to hit me, you have to hard retreat or find a switch, which is pretty great because some decks don't run high counts of switch. And if you're making them lose all their energy attached to their Pokemon, you could definitely turn that game in your favor. Raticate's another really cool colorless attacking Pokemon. Second Bite does a base of 30 damage, but then 30 more damage for each damage counter on your opponent's active Pokemon. So if you're just doing some chip damage into things, you can scale this up pretty quickly. If they've got, 7 damage counters on them already, you're going to be doing 240 altogether. That brings them up to 310. It's pretty good. You can be taking out a Mew VMAX. You could sneak this into Lost Box or any other decks that can just accelerate out energy, like the previously mentioned Baxcalibur or Flaffies. Just need to do a little bit of damage and then have some cleanup with Raticate. There's also a new Eevee card, which I don't know, I might be a bit biased to this because I just like Eevee, but its attack lets you search your deck for 3 Pokemon of different types, reveal them, and put them into your hand. Going second, attacking on your first turn, being able to establish into various evolution pieces, it can be pretty clutch. So things like Charizard EX lets you get your Charizard EX, your Pidgeot EX, and then maybe like a Manaphy to help establish it, just as a one-off in the deck, and then like Jet Energy into it. Doesn't seem like a bad call. Is it going to be super meta? Probably not, but I don't think it's one of those cards that's going to break the bank, and having 1 or 2 in your collection just in case you find that deck where it's like, you know what, I need that little bit of extra consistency in setting up a bunch of different types of Pokemon, maybe try Eevee out. Sandshrew in this set has a really cool ability in Sand Screen. Trainer cards in your opponent's discard pile can't be put back into their deck by an effect of your opponent's item or supporter cards. So if control decks start coming back, we've got a counter built. If they want to use Pal Pad, you just go no. If they want to use like Team Yell's Cheer, you just go no. So it's good that we have Sandshrew if control does start to get a little bit, well, out of control. The other fighting Pokemon I think is worth having in your collection is Hitmonlee. So you can use just 1 fighting energy on it and do 10 damage to each of your opponent's Pokemon. It is damage, so it will get blocked by Manaphy, but if they don't have one of those set up, being able to spread some damage around and help fix some numbers isn't a bad call. And for decks like Ting Lu, where you want damage counters on them to shut off their abilities, it's a great inclusion to have. The other bit of the attack is it's actually going to switch with one of your bench Pokemon. So with that previously mentioned Ting Lu, You're damaging everything, you're switching into Tinglu, and then it's just like, hey, if you have any abilities, you don't anymore, which is, well, a little bit shit for your opponent, but really good for you. And I know we already did cover Mew, but there's also a Mew 2 in this set that seems like it has some potential. For 2 colorless energy, you're going to do 20 damage, so you could be paying this with a double turbo energy and just doing, well, no damage. But during your opponent's next turn, if this Pokemon's damaged by an attack, put damage counters onto the attacking Pokemon equal to the amount that they did to this Pokemon. So if they're swinging for a massive number, like Giratina V-Star doing 280, they're also going to take 280, which is, well, pretty cheeky. The second attack is going to cost 2 Psychic and a colorless, 130 damage, discard 2 energy from this Pokemon. Not great, but like not bad. It's got other ways to attack. You could be putting this into like Gardevoir EX decks just to kind of sneak it in there, and yeah, doing 130 damage, ditching 2 isn't too bad, and having that first attack just to be able to kind of like mirror attack into them forces them to have a gust around it. It's definitely cool. There's also a Zubat that I think having 1 copy for your collection wouldn't be a bad call. More so for control decks, but also just if you have space in your deck, being able to use this isn't a bad call. Zubat's ability just lets you look at your opponent's hand once per turn, as long as it's in the active spot. It does have 1 retreat cost, so it can be a little bit awkward. Would be really powerful if it had free retreat, because then you could just splash it into decks. The fact that it also only has 40 health though is a little bit risky, so Lost Box decks will just take advantage of this, being able to put Sableye pings on it for easy knockouts, so keep that in mind. But for control decks, I could definitely see this being a great card to have. A very interesting evolution line we're getting from this set with energy acceleration inbuilt is Vileplume. So you get Oddish, which is Oddish. It evolves up into Gloom, and when you evolve up into it, you get to look at the top 3 cards of your deck and attach any number of basic energy cards you find there to your Pokemon in any way that you like. And then when it evolves up into Vileplume, you do the same thing, but for 8 cards instead of 3. So similar to the decks like Magnezone, where they're just looking at the top 6, getting any steel energy, putting it onto their Pokemon, you can be using Gloom and Vileplume and going for any energy. It's pretty solid, and definitely helps cover decks that aren't getting energy acceleration. So we mentioned fighting types don't really have energy acceleration, so now they can. Is it going to be super meta? Probably not, but does it have potential? Absolutely. It's not one of those cards that I'm going to say everybody needs to pick up, but if you're opening packs and you happen to pull some Glooms and Vileplumes, definitely hang on to those. So for casual leagues and stuff, Vileplume definitely seems like a fun option. If you're looking to pick up only the meta cards, you can probably skip this one, but if you want to grab the ones that seem like they have fun deck building potential, I definitely recommend picking up Vileplume. We're getting a Moltres, which could definitely see some play in fire decks. The ability makes it so it has no retreat cost as long as it's got a fire energy attached, so being a free pivot Pokemon, make sure that you can have Magma Base and proccing onto your bench guys and have this as a pivot after something's been knocked out. The attack's going to cost you 3 fire energy. You do have to discard 2 of them after you use the attack, but you're going to get to do 120 damage to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. So for fire decks, it's great just to help set up or clean up numbers. Charizard EX could charge this up. Early game, the Charizard's not doing a lot of damage, but you could be setting up numbers so that when the Charizard comes out and is only doing like 180 or 210, if they've already got 120 on there, you're just finishing them off. It's not bad. There's also a Starmie in this set that seems like it's got some interesting deck building potential with it. Its ability lets you put 2 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon. If you used it though, you do discard this Pokemon and all cards that are attached to it. It's got 90 HP, so you can search it out with Level Ball, you can get it back from the discard pile with Rescue Carrier, so it could definitely see some play. Having to evolve up into it though, having to give up minimum 2 deck slots to it, I'm not too sure how much of an impact this will have on the meta, but it's definitely one of those things that in the future it could see play. And yeah, if you're just trying to find ways to fix up some numbers, it's not bad. Trying to hit things on the bench, so like maybe Tinglu could even be running it instead of like Hawlucha, but I feel like Hawlucha is just a better way to be setting up damage pings. It's one of those cards, if you pull it from packs, hang on to it. Definitely seems like it has potential, but I wouldn't go like rushing out to pick this one up. The next batch of cards I'm going to cover are the ones that I think could be good, which, well, the bottom row of this page already kind of felt like that, and it's just kind of continuing on that trend. They've all definitely got potential. It's just very situational as to when or if it's going to come up. But if you pull these cards from packs, probably ones you're going to want to hang on to, but might not be ones you need to pick up as singles. First ones I'm going to cover are the tool cards that could have potential. So Big Air Balloon gives stage 2 Pokemon no retreat cost. There's not a lot of stage 2 Pokemon that want to be bouncing around, like Charizard EX. If it's in the active, it's in the active for a reason. Pidgeot EX already has free retreat, so it feels a little bit situational. If you're like me and you just like having all the tool cards, so if you ever need it for a deck, you're going to want to pick it up, but it's probably one of those ones that you could be skipping over. The other tool, Protective Goggles, removes weakness specifically from basic Pokemon. Basic Pokemon don't normally have a lot of health, so them not having a weakness isn't the biggest deal. And like the big basic Pokemon that can be tanking hits, the one that comes to mind for me is Bliss EV, and Bliss EV is a colorless Pokemon, so you can just be running Dunsparce to remove its weakness. Protective Goggles, it's one of those ones that if you want to grab all the tool cards, might come up in the future, but it's probably one of the ones that you could be skipping over. Also getting an item card in Grabber. Your opponent reveals their hand, choose a Pokemon you find there and put it on the bottom of their deck. It's going to be situational, like in control decks it could be good, in decks where like you want item cards and you can afford deck space, like maybe Mew EX will run this so that it can disrupt your opponent so they're not evolving. Maybe it sees play in that. Deck space is already quite limited though, and I can't see a lot of situations where Grabber would be coming up. If you want to get it for your collection, it could be good. Personally, I'm probably going to be skipping that one though. We've also got fossil cards coming out of this set. So the previously mentioned Aerodactyl card, if you're going to be running that, you're going to be wanting to pick up the Amber Fossil for it. If you're going to be just running that in Zoro box decks, you're not going to be needing the Amber Fossil, but grabbing one or two of these wouldn't be a bad call. There's also the Helix Fossil, which, well, yeah, it does evolve into Amistar, is also just not a bad item card to have. So if it's in the active spot, your opponent just can't play any stadium cards. So if you know that your deck is very dependent on not being hit with Path to the Peak, and you've already maxed out your stadium count, and you just want another counter card for Path to the Peak, even coming down in the first place, just run Helix Fossil, slap it in the active. You know that they can't counter your stadium. It's going to be sitting there for a while until they knock out Helix Fossil or get it onto your bench. So it could definitely be an interesting card to have, even if you're not planning on evolving up. There's also a Spearow and Fearow line that could be pretty good. So the Spearow has an ability that lets you evolve up into it on your first turn if you're going second. So in the future, if we get a Fearow EX or just another great Fearow attacker, that could be pretty solid. The Fearow we're getting in this set though has the attack Beak Catch that for one colorless energy lets you search your deck for 3 cards and put them into your hand, which is pretty solid if you don't get, well, Iono'd or judged the next turn. But if your opponent sees you grabbing any 3 cards, they're probably just going to Iono or judge you next turn, which you could almost use that information as a bit of a bait and just get 3 cards that you don't actually want. Since it's any 3 cards, you don't have to reveal them to your opponent. So get 3 cards that you're not going to be using. Like if you didn't hit VIP past your first turn, get them all into your hand so that when you get Iono'd, you know you're not drawing into them and just play like a step ahead on them. It'd be really weird to give up deck space to do that, but could technically do that. We're also getting a new Meowth and Persian line. Persian's ability is going to let you search your deck for a Giovanni's Charisma, pop it into your hand. So if you're relying on disrupting your opponent and setting up your energy with Giovanni's Charisma, definitely an interesting card you could be playing around with. Doduo and Dodrio also seem like they have some potential, with Dodrio's ability letting you put a damage counter on it to draw a card. It's not too bad. In Zoroark V-Star decks could be another way to set up your bench having damaged Pokemon, and it's also a great single prize attacker since Ballistic Beak only costs 1 energy, does a base damage of 10, but it's going to do 30 more damage for each damage counter on this Pokemon. So every turn that you're drawing a card, you're also charging up Dodrio to be a solid attacker in itself. Not a bad call. You could use Damage Pump to accelerate that damage onto it faster and get it online. Maybe it just becomes its own single prize deck, but with Lost Box being so prevalent in the current meta, Sableye going to see these and just take advantage of it. Greninja's going to see these and just take advantage of it. You put 1 damage counter on it, it's got 90 health. Greninja's going to finish 2 off at a time. It's a little bit terrifying. The Cubone from this set has a really funny ability though in Cheering Bone. So as long as this Pokemon's on your bench, the attacks used by your Marowak are going to do 30 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. So you could have 4 of these on your bench, run it with Zoroark, switch Zoroark for a Marowak. The Marowak we're getting in this set has Bone Throw for 1 fighting energy, 30 damage, which you could be boosting up to 150, and 30 damage to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. The second attack is going to do 120 damage, but it can't attack during your next turn, so you'd have to switch it out. You can be using things like Grant to charge it up even further and do higher damage. So Grant 4 Cubones, you're doing an extra 150. Boundless Power, you're doing 270 on a single prize Pokemon. It's not bad. Definitely feels like we have better single prize Pokemon that you could be building decks with, but if we get some more Marowaks in the future, yeah, Cubone could be kind of great. The Mr. Mime in the set has an ability that lets you Just ignore damage done to this Pokemon by attacks of your opponent's active Pokemon as long as you have the same number of energy attached as they do. It's a little bit odd, but in decks like Baxcalibur, where you can be rushing out a bunch of energy, the fact that this has an attack cost of a colorless energy, you could just slap in the active, put as many energy as they're ever going to have on there, and you're fine. Your opponent can obviously just attach an extra energy or retreat to remove some energy and get around this, but it's, yeah, fun little bit of shenanigans. Having it as a one-off index, I could see it seeing play. I'm not saying it will, but like maybe? If you pull it from a pack, hanging on to one copy isn't a bad call, but yeah, ultimately I don't think it's going to be great. There could be potential there though. The attack is going to let you put 3 damage counters on your opponent's Pokemon in any way that you'd like, so it's not amazing, but it's not the worst thing either. The new Venomoth coming out in the set seems like it's got some control potential as well. So 1 grass energy, you do 30 damage, your opponent's Pokemon is now confused, and during your opponent's next turn, they can't play any item cards from their hand. So into things like Lost Box, where they really want to play item cards, you're not letting them, they're also confused, so you're forcing them to hard retreat so that they're not confused again, but then they don't have a switch out. You could be buying yourself some time, and yeah, with cards like Giovanni's Charisma and Crushing Hammer, you could just be getting rid of energy and slowly kind of whittling away at your opponent and then confusing them, item locking them. Someone's going to find a way to make Venomoth work. I don't think it's going to be necessarily top tier, but someone's definitely going to find a deck with it. So it's one of those cards, keep an eye out. If you're a fan of control, it could be good, but I don't think it's going to be meta defining. There's also a Paris Parasect line in the set that seems like it does actually have some potential. So for just 1 grass energy, flip 2 coins, search your deck for any number of grass Pokemon up to the number of heads, and put them right onto your bench. So you can be cheating evolution. In standard format, this could be coming up. It's a way to cheat out like stage 2 EX Pokemon without having to run rare candies. If we get ways to manipulate coin flips, we previously had Will and Glimwood Tangle. I could definitely see us getting some sort of reprint of something that lets you play around with coin flips during the lifetime that this card's out. And Parasect could become amazing because of that. Also in GLC, this is definitely a funny card to run there, since you can be running Glimwood Tangled and reflipping coins and getting your stage 2s out really effectively with Parasect. So in that format, 100%. In standard, it's definitely got some potential. The Dragonite in the set is just going to make it so your Pokemon have no retreat cost. If we find a way to cheat out Dragon Pokemon like we previously could with, I think there was a Lance card back in the day, Lance Prism Star, let you just search your deck for 2 Dragon Pokemon, put them onto your bench. If we get something that can do that, having this index, it could definitely have some amazing potential. Having to evolve up into it though, I'm not too sure that a lot of decks want to justify that deck space, but maybe. Like there's a lot of Pokemon that have attacks based on your retreat cost and they scale up. They're covering a lot of types currently. Maybe someone tries to make that a deck and you just need a way to completely negate it. Dragonite's a way to get around that. The Arcanine for this set also seems like it's got some potential and could be a great single prize addition to fire type decks like Charizard EX. So its attack, the first one's going to do 30 damage, attach up to 2 basic fire energy cards from your discard pile to this Pokemon. It's not bad, but the second attack is what's really interesting. It's going to do 240 damage just flat. You do have to discard 2 fire energy from this Pokemon, so it's pretty hefty attack cost, but having a single prize Pokemon that can be one-shotting into basic EX Pokemon does cost a lot of energy. So it's one of those ones that like, it could be good. Yeah, it's kind of it could be good. If you pull it, keep it. I wouldn't necessarily recommend going out and buying it though. And as always like to go over the cards that are likely going to see play in the Gym Leader Challenge format. If you've never played it before, definitely one to look into. Gym Leader Challenge, it's effectively a singleton format for Pokemon. So similar to something like Commander in Magic, but for Pokemon. You can only run 1 copy of every card in your deck. Basic energy, you can run unlimited accounts, but like supporters, Pokemon, special energy, just one-offs. And these are cards that I think are going to justify having those one-off slots in decks. First off, Giovanni's Charisma seems like an interesting one. It adds energy acceleration for types that don't necessarily have it, as well as some disruption. The new Stadium card we're getting, just being able to discard an energy and draw a card, for decks that want energy in the discard, like Psychic and Lightning, that's a great Stadium to be able to include. The Almastar line also seems very cool for GLC. So Helix Fossil just preventing your opponent from being able to play stadiums, not too bad. But then the Amistar being able to do 90 damage to the active and 30 damage to 2 things on the bench, that's great. There's a lot of water Pokemon that have spread-based attacks, and you could definitely make a spread-type water deck with this now. The Swim Freely engine also seems like a missed opportunity. Not a lot of people are jumping on in GLC, and having another attacker for it in Seaking seems kind of great. So you could be running Finian, Accelerate Energy out to Seaking, Accelerate Energy out to Seadra, Accelerate Energy out to Dugong. We've also got Quagsire from the Dragon's Majesty set, like way back, that lets you move water energy cards from your Pokemon to the active Pokemon. So you could be running the Swim Freely engine with that and just set up a basic and a stage 1 instead of having to run something like Frostmoth, which is limited to the bench, or Baxcalibur or Deluge Blastoise, which are stage 2s. It's nice. So just one basic, one stage 1, and you can kind of get around that. The new Squirtle in the set also having Withdraw could be a great inclusion for GLC. So if you've got the Deluge Blastoise in your deck and you start your Squirtle and you really don't want it to get knocked out, just use Withdraw, flip a coin, and hope that it doesn't. The Paris Parasect we did already cover, and just being able to cheat out evolution Pokemon in GLC would be amazing, so could be a great inclusion for grass decks. There's a new Magneton in the set that lets you get item cards back from your discard pile. I believe it's 2. Lightning type has been known to be a little bit control oriented with some builds. I know there was I think it was a Lantern that lets you get item cards back as well. So being able to use things like Crushing Hammers, it's interesting. There's definitely potential for that card in that format. The new Machop and Machamp, also they've got potential as rogue decks in Standard. I don't see a massive potential in it, but for GLC it seems great. So Machamp having 180 HP, it's beefy, and then its ability Guts. If you're going to be knocked out from damage, flip a coin. If heads, you survive on 10 damage instead. You can repeatedly do that, so you can just be sat in the active and just keep hitting into your opponent, and they might not be able to finish you off unless they can put like a status condition or a damage counter on it to finish you. And you can just be sat there doing 100 damage into them every turn and discarding 2 cards from the top of their deck. So milling them out. In GLC, that's big. You only have 1 copy of cards by removing 2 every turn, and if they're not knocking you out, just continually removing cards, they're going to be pissed off. The new Hitmonchan also seems great for GLC. If this Pokemon's damaged by an attack from your opponent's Pokemon, you put 3 damage counters onto the attacking Pokemon. With things like Cape of Toughness, Bravery Charm, I think there's another one that I'm forgetting about that gives your basic Pokemon more health. You can make it so Hitmonchan is just a big bulky guy sitting in the active. Your opponent's hitting you, they're taking some damage. You're using Excited Punch, you do 60 damage to them, and on your next turn 60 more damage. So effectively use it once for 60, and then you're going to be doing 120 every single turn, and they're going to be taking damage when they're hitting you, and you're a basic with a cheap attack to charge up. It's definitely a great inclusion for decks. There's also a new Coughing and Wheezing. The Coughing I do have on here, but it's probably not going to be the one you're running since we do have one that has Ascension already. But the Wheezing definitely seems like a great inclusion for GLC. A lot of decks are already running the Ascension Coughing to evolve into Galarian Wheezing that shuts off abilities from your opponent's Pokemon. And this Wheezing has an ability that if it's knocked out, you flip a coin. If heads, the thing that knocked it out is also knocked out. So being able to run a split evolution line in GLC, like if your opponent's not super reliant on abilities and you don't need Galarian Wheezing for that matchup, just run Wheezing and you're fine. And its attack is also pretty solid. It costs 2 colorless energy, so you could be charging it up with like a DTE. Double colorless energy is also just legal for GLC, or counter energy. Attach for turn, Dark Patch, there's a lot of ways to get it charged up. You're going to do a base of 50 damage, which isn't amazing, but then 10 damage to each of your opponent's bench Pokemon. Doing a bit of spread for Dark decks is pretty solid, since you've got Guzzlord that when it takes a knockout, it takes an extra prize. So if you can be setting up damage to make sure that it's always hitting a knockout into something, you're always taking an extra prize, definitely a great inclusion to have in there. The Aerodactyl also being great for GLC, being able to do 100 damage and devolve a Pokemon. Only single prize Pokemon are legal in GLC, so not getting a knockout into an EX isn't something you have to worry about, but not getting a knockout into a stage 2 wouldn't be great. So devolving it, like if they're running a Deluge Blastoise, boss it up, hit it with Aerodactyl, it devolves down to Squirtle or Wartortle and gets knocked out, you're in a great position then. The Lickitung, 70 damage and making it so that they can't attack during their next turn. There's not a lot of switching options you can be running in that format, so you could effectively just run a control deck that is doing some decent damage, like 70 damage, 2 turns in a row, that's 140. You're going to be knocking out most things with it. The Doduo line, also great for normal type decks. Being able to draw cards and just scale up damage, it's definitely a solid inclusion. And the Clefable being able to take extra prizes is always great. Psychic type decks, you can be running Dusknoir that lets you manipulate damage counters around. You could be running some spread based things like Wheezing that does I think it's 20 damage to everything if they've got damage counters on it already. So then Clefable comes out, cleans things up, takes an extra prize. You're in a great position with that. And those are the cards I'm thinking are going to have an impact on the Gym Leader Challenge format coming out of the Pokemon 151 set. And that's it for my recommendations of what you should pick up for this set. So to kind of round everything up, I will be showing you a full list of all the cards that I've talked about. So if you're keen on just picking up everything that might see play, this is the list that you're going to be wanting to take a look at. There is quite a bit on there. There's 151 Pokemon in the set though, and there's not 151 Pokemon on this list, so it has thinned it down for you considerably, but I'm going to thin it down a little bit more. So if you're after everything, take a screenshot of this, go for it. If you're opening a lot of packs, these are ones that you're going to want to hang on to. Anything over it, you can probably afford to, well, sell off or give to a friend that's trying to get the set as well. And if you're more so just looking for the things that realistically will have an impact on the meta, these are the ones that I'm going to be recommending. So it has thinned down the list quite a bit there for you. So the supporter cards, picking up 2 of most of them is probably fine. Like Bills, Daisies, Ericas, you might not even need those. Like if you don't think they're great, skip them. Giovanni's though, I'm thinking will see play. The new Stadium card, I'm thinking will see play, but again, if you're not running something like Gardevoir or Flaffy where you want energy in the discard pile, you can probably even skip over that Stadium as well. The tool cards, I always recommend picking up because you never know when they're going to come up. But if you know, hey, I don't like running Stage 1 decks, don't get Rigid Band. If you know, hey, like basic Pokemon not having a weakness isn't that big, you can probably skip that one too. So just thinning out a few more of them there for you. The attackers on here as well, there is quite a few that are kind of deck specific. So if you don't like Wigglytuff, don't go for it. But I definitely think that card does have potential, especially with Charon's Care being in the format and Dunsparce to remove the weakness. Blastoise seems like it has potential. I do have the Charizard on here, and that one I'm kind of on the fence about, I'll be completely honest. Like with the Pokemon Go Charizard, I think that it has potential. In the base Charizard EX deck for an early game attacker, like it doesn't seem like a bad call, but giving up deck space to it and giving up that much energy, it might be a little bit risky. Early days too, please don't pick this up because at launch Charizard cards are going to be ridiculously overpriced. They always are. In the future though, or like if you pull one, it's probably one that's worth hanging on to. The rest though, I do think have potential to impact the meta. I've also got Alakazam on here, which is again one of those ones that if you see yourself playing Alakazam, pick it up. Like this is more so just the list that I'm going to be picking up and seems like it has meta potential. Doesn't mean it's written in stone. So yeah, that's probably one you can skip if you know you're not going to be playing it. Mew though, definitely worth picking up. Zapdos definitely seems like it's worth picking up. Miraidon seeing quite a bit of a comeback. Hitmonlee if you run Ting-Lu or even just to fix up numbers, being able to use a Luminous energy to use it, it's a great inclusion. And Sandshrew, just in case control decks start coming back, having it as just like a splashable card to just chuck into your deck and just go like, no, it's a good one to keep. That's just my thoughts on the set though, and I'd love to hear yours, so make sure to comment down below. If there's some cards that you feel are missing on here or that you're really confused as to why they're even on here in the first place, always happy to have a chat in the comment section. If you found this video useful in any way, make sure to hit subscribe because there's always more content just around the corner and it'll probably help you out too, and hitting that thumbs up button's always appreciated as well. Till next time though, take care of yourself.